I stared at my reflection in the elevator's polished doors, adjusting my purposefully cheap suit from Target. In a few minutes, I would sit through another excruciating family dinner where my successful siblings would take turns reminding me what a disappointment I was. If they only knew. The elevator opened to the exclusive restaurant's top floor, where my family was already seated at their regular table. The Martinez family, known for their chain of luxury hotels and their complete inability to recognize true success unless it came with a designer label. Ah, Olivia finally decides to join us, my older sister Diana announced, checking her Cartier watch. Some of us have important meetings tomorrow. We can't all keep retail hours. I slid into my seat, ignoring the way my mother's eyes critically scanned my off-the-rack clothes. Sorry, got caught up at work. Still at that boring office job? My younger brother Michael smirked, adjusting his Italian silk tie. What is it you do again? Processing payments or something? Accounts payable, I replied quietly, though that hadn't been my real job in years. Someone has to do it. My father sighed dramatically, swirling his expensive scotch. Olivia, you're 35 years old. When are you going to do something meaningful with your life? Your sister just closed a $20 million hotel deal. Your brother's real estate company is expanding nationwide. And you're still pushing papers. If they could see my bank account, they'd choke on their overpriced wine. But I kept that thought to myself, just like I've been doing for the past 7 years. Speaking of success, Diana practically purred. Wait until you hear about tomorrow's meeting. Martinez Hotels is finally partnering with Summit Enterprises. Their CEO is flying in to sign the contracts personally. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face carefully neutral. Summit Enterprises, my company, though none of them knew that. $50 million, Michael added. That's how much Summit is investing in Diana's new resort project. Now that's what real success looks like, sis. Maybe you should take notes. I took a sip of water, fighting back a smile. They had no idea that I'd spent the morning reviewing those same contracts, or that my signature would be the one they'd need tomorrow. The story of how I got here is one of quiet determination and careful planning. 7 years ago, I was exactly what they thought, a low-level accountant processing payments for a small tech startup. But unlike my siblings, who relied on our family name and connections, I paid attention. I learned. I saw opportunities they were too arrogant to notice. The startup I worked for had brilliant technology but terrible financial management. When they were about to go bankrupt, I used my savings and knowledge of their books to buy controlling interests for pennies on the dollar. The founders were relieved to have someone handle the business side while they focused on innovation. Within 2 years, that small startup grew into Summit Enterprises, now one of the largest technology and investment firms in the country. I kept my ownership private, operating through holding companies and letting others be the public face. I attended board meetings via video call, using voice modulation software to maintain my anonymity. While my siblings boasted about their millions, I quietly built billions. Summit Enterprises now own significant stakes in over 50 companies, including some of my family's biggest competitors. But I never flaunted my success, never moved out of my modest apartment, never traded my simple Honda for a flashier car. The waiter arrived with another round of drinks, interrupting my thoughts. My mother launched into her favorite topic, my perpetual singleness. You know, Olivia, if you put a little effort into your appearance, maybe wore something nicer than department store clothes, you might find someone successful. Look at Diana. Her husband is a managing partner at Goldman Sachs. Diana preened. James and I are actually hosting a charity gala next month. $3,000 a plate, very exclusive. But don't worry, Olivia, we know that's not really your scene. Yeah, wouldn't want to embarrass the family in front of actual successful people, Michael chuckled. I thought about the invitation to that same gala sitting on my desk, addressed to Summit's CEO, begging for my attendance. The irony almost made me laugh. Unhappy with my life, I said simply, cutting into my steak. Not everyone measures success the same way. My father scoffed. That's what people say when they fail to achieve anything noteworthy. You had every advantage, the same opportunities as your siblings. You just wasted them. If he only knew how those wasted opportunities had turned out. Summit Enterprises was now worth more than the entire Martinez family fortune 10 times over. Oh, Diana suddenly exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with malicious glee. I almost forgot to mention, that little tech company you used to work for. Summit bought them, right? Imagine if you'd stayed. You could have been part of something successful for once. I carefully dabbed my lips with my napkin, suppressing a smile. Yes, imagine that. Summit Enterprises is incredible, Michael added. Their CEO is brilliant, very private, but absolutely ruthless in business. That's the kind of success you could have had, Olivia, if you hadn't been so mediocre. The Summit CEO is coming to the contract signing tomorrow, Diana said proudly. I hear they're very selective about their partnerships. Obviously, they recognize the Martinez name means something. Obviously, I murmured, checking my phone. An email from my CFO needed attention. Another acquisition in the works, bigger than anything my sister could imagine. Put that away, my mother snapped. It's not like you're getting any important messages. Show some manners. If she could see the 9-figure deal I was currently negotiating via email, she might think differently. But I just tucked my phone away obediently. The rest of dinner passed in its usual pattern. My siblings competing to showcase their achievements, my parents beaming with pride at their successful children, and everyone taking turns making subtle jabs at my apparent failure to launch. I let them talk, letting their words wash over me like background noise. Tomorrow they would all be in for the shock of their lives. The contract signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Martinez Hotel's headquarters. Diana had been pushing for this deal for months, desperate to partner with Summit Enterprises. She had no idea she'd been negotiating with her unsuccessful sister the entire time. As we finished dinner, Diana couldn't resist one final dig. Don't worry, Olivia. Maybe someday you'll get to visit one of my luxury resorts. I might even give you the family discount. I smiled, thinking about the ocean view mansion I owned in Maui. That's very generous of you, Diana. Michael threw down his black Amex to pay the bill. Next time, dinner's at my new penthouse. Though I guess it might make some people feel a bit inadequate. He looked pointedly at my simple clothes. If they could see my real estate portfolio, they might feel a bit inadequate themselves. But I just nodded politely and gathered my Target purse. Good luck with your meeting tomorrow, I said as we prepared to leave. I hope everything goes exactly as planned. Diana smiled condescendingly. Don't worry, little sister. Some of us know how to handle important business dealings. You just focus on not messing up your little payment processing job. I walked to my Honda Civic, parked between Diana's Mercedes and Michael's BMW. Tomorrow, I would arrive at their office in my real car, a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Tomorrow, they would finally see who I really was. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I drove home to my deliberately modest apartment, logged into my secure computer system, and continued building my empire while they congratulated themselves on their small successes. Because true power isn't about showing off, it's about knowing exactly when to reveal your cards. The next morning, I dressed in my real clothes, a perfectly tailored Chanel suit that cost more than Diana's car. My assistant had arranged everything exactly as planned. The look on my family's faces would be priceless. The Martinez Hotel's headquarters lobby fell silent as I walked through the revolving doors at precisely 9:55 a.m. Gone was the Target clearance rack outfit, replaced by a full designer wardrobe that probably cost more than most people's cars. My assistant Thomas walked 2 steps behind me, carrying a leather briefcase worth more than my brother's monthly mortgage payment. The security guard did a double take. He was used to seeing me in my accounts payable disguise. I handed him my Summit Enterprises ID badge, not the usual Martinez Hotel's visitor pass I use when visiting my family. Ms. Martinez, he stammered. I didn't. I mean, you're not on the visitor list today. Check again, I said calmly. Under Summit Enterprises. His eyes widened as he found my name, my real name, on the VIP list. Of course, Ms. Martinez. The executive elevator is right this way. I could feel the lobby's collective gaze following me as I walked to the private elevator. My Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floor, each step carrying the confidence of someone worth billions, not the meek persona I'd maintained for years. The executive conference room was on the top floor. Through the glass walls, I could see my family already assembled. Diana pacing nervously in her knockoff designer suit. I knew it was fake because my company owned the real designer's licensing rights. Michael straightening his tie compulsively. My parents sitting at the head of the table, looking proud and expectant. Thomas checked his watch. They're expecting Summit CEO at 10 a.m. sharp. Are you ready? I smiled. I've been ready for 7 years. At exactly 10 a.m., Thomas opened the conference room door. The conversation inside died immediately as I walked in. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me, expressions morphing from confusion to disbelief. Olivia? Diana's voice cracked. What are you doing here? We're about to have a very important meeting. I know, I interrupted smoothly, taking my seat at the opposite end of the table. That's why I'm here. My father's face darkened. This is not the time for your games, Olivia. Summit Enterprises CEO is arriving any minute. Actually, I said, opening my briefcase and removing a thick contract. Summit CEO is already here. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her throat, her fingers clutching her pearl necklace. Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. What are you talking about? Diana demanded, her voice rising. Where's the real CEO? I smiled, sliding my business card across the table. Pure white cardstock embossed with simple black text. Olivia Martinez, CEO and founder, Summit Enterprises. My father snatched at the card, his face turning an interesting shade of purple. This is impossible. Summit Enterprises is worth billions. You're just a what, Dad? A disappointment? A failure? The black sheep. I kept my voice calm as I gestured to Thomas, who began distributing copies of the contract. I think you'll find everything in order, though you might want your lawyers to review Section 7.2 carefully. The terms are quite strict about maintaining current management standards. Diana lunged for the contract, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. This can't be real. You process payments for a living. Actually, I corrected her. I haven't processed payments in 7 years. I've been too busy building Summit Enterprises into one of the largest private companies in the world. That little tech company you mocked last night, I bought it when it was failing, just like I've bought dozens of other companies, including, as of last week, your husband's division at Goldman Sachs. Michael collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. The penthouse deal, the new development projects, all financed through Summit subsidiaries. I confirmed. You've actually been working for me for the past 3 years. Surprise. My mother finally found her voice. But your apartment, your clothes, that horrible little car. All part of a carefully maintained image, I explained. Not everyone needs to flaunt their success, Mother. Some of us prefer to be judged by our actual achievements rather than our appearances. Why? My father demanded. Why the deception? Why let us think that I was a failure? I finished for him. Because you never would have accepted my success if you knew about it. You would have tried to take control, to interfere, to claim credit, just like you've done with everything else in this family. I stood up, smoothing my channel skirt. Now, shall we discuss the terms of Summit's investment in Martinez Hotels? $50 million is a lot of money. We should make sure everyone understands exactly what they're signing. Diana's face had turned almost green. The negotiations. I've been negotiating with you this whole time. Through intermediaries, I nodded. Though I have to say, your initial proposal was rather inflated. Fortunately, I already knew the real numbers. The next hour was excruciating for them and deeply satisfying for me. I walked them through every detail of the contract, watching their faces as they realized just how completely I controlled the situation. Summit's investment would save Martinez Hotels from its mounting debt problems they tried desperately to hide from everyone, including each other. Of course, I added casually, this deal is contingent on some management changes. Diana, you'll be stepping down as project lead. We have someone more qualified in mind. You can't do this, she whispered. This is my project. My deal. Actually, I can. And it's my deal. Just like the last 3 successful projects you claimed credit for were actually backed by Summit subsidiaries. I turned to Michael. As for your real estate empire, we should discuss the leveraged positions you've been hiding from the family. Summit now owns the majority of your debt. My father stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. Now see here, Olivia. You can't just come in here and... I cut him off. And I have. Summit Enterprises isn't just another company, Dad. We control significant interests in over 50 major corporations. Your hotel chain. It's a small investment for us. A footnote. I let that sink in before continuing. But because you're family, I'm offering you a chance to save everything you've built. Sign the contract. Accept the management changes. Stop pretending to be more successful than you are. Or don't sign, and I'll watch everything you've built crumble when Summit calls in its markers. The room fell silent except for the sound of Diana's quiet sobbing. My mother had sunk into her chair, her perfect posture crumbling. Michael stared at the contract like it was a venomous snake. My father was the first to pick up his pen. His hand trembled slightly as he signed, decades of arrogance finally cracking. One by one, they all signed. As Thomas collected the contracts, I stood up. I have another meeting across town. My real office makes this building look like a storage shed, by the way. Thomas will go over the transition details with you. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Diana, about that charity gala next month? Don't worry about my invitation. I bought the venue last year. In fact, I own most of the properties your events are hosted in. Interesting how that works, isn't it? The drive back to Summit's real headquarters gave me time to reflect. The look on their faces had been satisfying, yes, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being free to be myself. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Why didn't you tell us? I thought about all the family dinners where they'd belittled my choices, all the snide comments about my clothes and car, all the times they'd made me feel small because I didn't fit their definition of success. Because I typed back, you never would have believed me. You only respect power when it's shoved in your face. Over the next few months, things changed dramatically. Diana was quietly moved to a minor role, her successful projects now properly attributed to Summit's management. Michael's real estate empire was restructured under Summit's oversight, his hidden financial problems resolved, but his autonomy severely restricted. My parents, well, they tried to rewrite history. Suddenly they had always seen my potential and knew I would be successful. They bragged about their brilliant daughter, the secret billionaire, conveniently forgetting all the years they treated me like a disappointment. I maintained my simple apartment, though I did finally upgrade my car. The Honda was donated to a women's shelter. My real homes, including the penthouse that occupied the top 3 floors of Summit's headquarters, remained private. The next family dinner was held in my real office, 60 stories above the city. I watched them take in the view, the priceless art, the evidence of true wealth that made their fortunes look like pocket change. You know, I said, sipping a glass of wine that cost more than Diana's monthly salary, success isn't about what you show people. It's about what you build when they're not looking. They had no response to that. Finally, after all these years, the black sheep had silenced the rest of the flock. But the best revenge? I still shop at Target sometimes. Because true power isn't about labels or appearances. It's about knowing exactly who you are and not letting anyone else define your worth.